A couple nights ago at Bally's, there was a guy at the table from Austin. He at least went to college there. I think he grew up there. So he was talking a lot about college football, a lot about the Longhorns, like when they had Mac Brown and Vince Young. So I have a pretty good memory. So even though I'm not a diehard Longhorns fan, we were talking about some things related to Longhorns football. So at one point, I tell him, I remember the game Fozzy Whittaker got hurt. Texas was playing at Missouri. First drive of the game, Fozzy Whittaker got hurt. That should have been a very easy win for Texas. As it is, Missouri couldn't even score 20 points, but Fozzy Whittaker was the Longhorns' entire offense. Without him, Texas only scored 5 that day. So that was a game in fall 2011. So he doesn't understand. He thinks I must be a diehard Longhorns fan who lives in Austin also to remember all the details about that. So he says to me, "So what, you're Longhorns or Tigers?" And I said, I don't really like either team that much. He goes, "No, you have to be either like a diehard Longhorns fan who lives in Austin his entire life or a diehard Tigers fan who lived in Missouri his whole life. How do you know that?" And I said, "I was watching the game that day." He goes, No. How do you know that? I don't care if you were watching the game. Now it's more than 10 years later. How do you remember the details about that game?" So he didn't believe me when I just kept saying, I was watching the game and it happened and I remember. So then, in case he thought it was like some kind of a trick, later we were talking about the championship game, not the Vince Young game, the one where they had Colt McCoy, he got hurt. I started talking about the game before that. The Longhorns were playing Nebraska. Sue, Ndamukong Suh, was on Nebraska at the time. The second to last play of the game was Sue pursuing McCoy. He threw the ball out of bounds, and there was 1 second left, ultimately, for a Longhorns field goal that made them win the game. So I said to him, people don't understand how lucky Texas was that Sue was right on top of McCoy. Because if Sue was actually pursuing McCoy a little slower, he might have taken 1 or 2 more steps before throwing the ball out of bounds. As it was, in real time, there were zeros on the clock after that pass out of bounds. They reviewed it and put 1 second back on. So if Sue wasn't as good as he was, McCoy might have ran a little more towards the boundary before letting it go, and there would not have been time left for that field goal. So now he understands. I just remembered a few things about the Longhorns. I wasn't like tricking him just about the Fozzy Whittaker thing. I remembered 2 things about Longhorns football without being a diehard Longhorns fan. So at one point, because a lot of other people, they were kind of talking college football a little, not specifically about the Longhorns, he stands up and comes around and hugs me and says, "I can't be having these conversations with anyone else in this room. You're my favorite person in the room tonight." So after that, eventually our table broke. Me and him went to different tables. I would have liked to have been at the same table with him. We went to different tables. The table he went to was very loud. All night I couldn't hear exactly what they were talking about, but they were talking about things and laughing, and they were very loud. So we're on different tables now. We're like 2 tables apart. I hear him, because he's having a good time over there, at one point say, "Oh, I've been at the wrong table all night." Like, that was a little offensive to me, because me and him were having a great time on table 1 before we broke, and he went to table 3. So I walk over to him, like, very seriously, and said, "I just heard you say you were at the wrong table all night, table 1. Ask every single person here who Texas was playing the game Fozzy Whittaker got hurt. Nobody has any idea. You know that." So he said, he didn't, I wasn't serious, but he said, he didn't mean to offend me, but the table as a whole was a lot better than the table we were on, at least in terms of the social aspect. I don't know about the hands being played. Also, right before we broke, this was the same night with the same guy, that guy got all in, lost. He had already made 1 trip to the ATM and come back. So he got all in and lost again. And he said to the dealer, kind of quietly, I mean, the dealer is a lot closer to the guy than I was to the guy. And he either said, "That was my last 300, or "I'm on my last 300. And he said that and he walked away. And if he said, "That was my last 300, he's done for the night," we could open the seat. If he said, "I'm on my last 300, that means he's going to the ATM one more time and coming back. We didn't know which one he said. And this was interesting because he had played a hand that ended on the turn, and he asked the dealer to put the river card out. And the dealer mentioned something about Schrodinger's cat, which is like a thought experiment. If you put a cat and a vial of poison in a box and seal it, and the poison is going to come out of the vial at an unknown time, you don't know if the cat is dead or alive until you open the box. So until you open it, you could think of the cat as both alive and dead. All right. The dealer said something about that when he asked to see the river card, when the hand ended on the turn. And I said, I don't know a ton about Schrodinger's cat, except from the Big Bang Theory, but that doesn't sound right. Once we see the turn card, like if you told him, no, I can't show you the river card, then that would have been more like it. But once you show it to him, like it has nothing to do with it. So we kind of joked about that a little bit. But then when he said what we couldn't understand, either that was my last 300 or I'm on my last 300, and walked away before we could ask him, that was exactly Schrodinger's cat. Because until he comes back to the table, we could think of him both as returning to the seat and being gone for the night. So then we started talking more about it. The dealer agreed that was much more like Schrodinger's cat than when he asked to rabbit hunt the river. And it was weird that we couldn't hear him. I mean, the dealer's face was about 3 inches from him when he said that. I understood how I couldn't hear him, but the dealer said he couldn't hear him also, and it was like the perfect end to that Schrodinger's cat discussion. So me and that guy had a great time talking about Fozzy, Whittaker, and Colt McCoy, and then me and the dealer, in relation to that guy, talked a little about Schrodinger's cat. So that was an interesting night at the tables.